Welcome, I'm absolutely thrilled you're here today. We're jumping straight into unlocking some real, practical JavaScript skills with this explainer. If you've been putting in the hours, trying to wrap your head around how websites actually become interactive, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to break down that barrier between knowing the theory and actually writing the code.
So be honest for a second. Does this sound familiar? You're watching a tutorial, you're nodding along, and everything just makes perfect sense. But the literal second you open a blank code editor, you just freeze up. It's incredibly frustrating, right? It's a phase almost every developer goes through, often called tutorial hell. Well, this explainer is designed to finally bridge that gap. We're going to step away from passive watching and get you into a truly action-oriented mindset.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We're covering the 6 core building blocks that will give you absolute power over any web page. The DOM mindset, grabbing elements, changing text in HTML, manipulating attributes, spawning new elements, and finally, modifying styling.
Starting with number 1, the DOM mindset. Understanding the DOM.
You hear the acronym DOM thrown around constantly. It stands for Document Object Model. Now, I know that sounds like a bunch of abstract technical jargon, but it really isn't. The DOM is quite literally everything you see on your screen. Imagine your HTML file as this massive tree. The root is your HTML tag, and branching off from it are the head and the body. Inside the body branch, you might have a div branch, and off that div, a heading and a paragraph. Every single piece of HTML is a node on this giant tree structure. Fun fact here, a complex modern web page like YouTube or Twitter, it can easily have thousands of these individual nodes loaded all at once. Crazy, right?
So, what actually is DOM manipulation? Basically, it's the act of changing that visible page dynamically, right on the fly, without the user ever having to hit the refresh button. Think about it. When you click a Download Now button and a 10-second countdown magically appears, that's DOM manipulation. If you're scrolling down a website and you see clouds in the background moving at different speeds to create that cool parallax effect, that's DOM manipulation too. You are literally using JavaScript to reach into that tree and change the nodes.
Moving on to Section 2, Grabbing Elements. Selecting nodes. Now, here is the absolute golden rule of JavaScript. You cannot change what you can't grab. So let's learn how to actually select these nodes from our HTML. If you're digging around in older code bases, you're going to see a lot of legacy selectors, things like getElementById or getElementsByClassName. And, they work, but they're super specific. Modern JavaScript gave us a massive upgrade. The modern standard is querySelector and querySelectorAll. These are universal. You can pass them a tag name, an ID using a hashtag, or a class using a dot, literally exactly like you write CSS. It just makes selecting the exact element you want feel incredibly intuitive.
I do need to give you a quick warning right here, though. If you use querySelectorAll because you want to grab multiple elements, say all the list items on a page, it returns something called a node list. Now, it looks exactly like a standard array, but it behaves slightly differently. You can't just slap a change onto the whole list at once. You actually have to loop through it. So you'd use something like a for-each loop or a standard for loop to manipulate each element one by one. Definitely keep that in your back pocket.
Next up is Section 3, Changing Text and HTML, Altering Content.
Okay, so once we've grabbed our element, what's next? This is where we start altering the actual words and structure inside the elements we just pulled from the DOM. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the nuanced but absolutely vital difference between your two main options here. You have textContent and innerHTML. TextContent is generally going to be your best friend. It's faster, it safely edits pure text, and it'll even read and override text that's currently hidden by CSS. But if you need to dynamically inject actual HTML, let's say you want to change a word but also wrap it in an I tag to make it italicized, you have to use innerHTML. Just tread carefully because innerHTML will completely replace the existing internal structure of that element.
That brings us to Section 4, Manipulating Attributes, Changing Element Traits.
Sometimes you don't actually want to change the text, you want to change the traits of the element itself. Think about swapping out an image source or changing where a link takes you. Every HTML tag has attributes, like src for images or href for links. You've got 3 essential commands here. getAttribute lets you read what the current value is. setAttribute lets you update it. You just pass it the name of the attribute and the new value, like a totally new image URL. And finally, removeAttribute completely deletes that attribute right off the element. It's actually really straightforward.
Now, I want to pause here for a quick moment of tough love, directly from our source material.
No one remembers every line of code. Don't memorize, use Google, use AI, and build your problem-solving logic. Seriously, if you step away for a weekend and completely forget the exact syntax for setAttribute, do not panic. Do not sit there thinking you aren't cut out for coding. The best engineers in the world don't rote memorize syntax. They understand the core concepts, and when they forget a command, they just look it up. Focus on the logic, not the memorization.
All right, Section 5. Spawning new elements. Creating new HTML.
This is the part where you feel like you have absolute magic at your fingertips. You aren't just changing what's already there, you're creating brand new HTML completely out of thin air. But while it feels like magic, this brilliantly illustrates how it's essentially just a logical three-step assembly line. Step 1, you use createElement to spawn a blank HTML tag in JavaScript's memory. Step 2, you add content to it, maybe using our old friend textContent. But listen, if you stop right here, you won't see it on the page. It literally only exists in memory. So, step 3 is absolutely vital. You have to actually attach it to the DOM, usually to the body or a specific div, using an append or prepend command.
So the really crucial thing to understand here is the precise difference in placement when you're attaching those newly spawned elements. If you use append or appendChild, it slaps your new element at the very end of the container. But if you use prepend, it pushes it right up to the very beginning, acting as the very first child of that container. It just gives you complete architectural control over the layout.
And our final block, Section 6, Modifying Styling, CSS through JavaScript. We've changed the structure, we've changed the text. Now let's talk about controlling the visual design and CSS directly through JavaScript. When it comes to visual design, you basically have two main paths. You can use direct inline styling. For example, typing element.style.background color equals red. This forcibly applies the CSS right onto the HTML element. However, the much cleaner, highly recommended approach in the industry is class manipulation using element.classList. Instead of writing out raw CSS inside your JavaScript file, you write a nice, clean CSS class over in your style sheet and use JavaScript simply to flip that class on and off.
The classList property essentially gives you superpowers over your web design. You can use .add to instantly attach a complex CSS class to an element. You can use .remove to strip it away. And my absolute personal favorite is .toggle. Toggle's incredibly smart. If the class is already there, it removes it. But if the class is missing, it adds it. This is exactly how you build things like dark mode switches with literally just a single line of logic. It's a real game changer.
We've covered a massive amount of ground in this explainer, and I want to leave you with this core philosophy from our source. Coding is not a game of rote memorization. It's a game of using your brain to piece together the building blocks. You now have the 6 core building blocks of DOM manipulation. You know how to select, edit text, edit attributes, spawn elements, and apply styling. The rest is just taking these blocks and snapping them together to solve problems. It's like a giant puzzle.
So here is my challenge to you. You have the blocks. The absolute only way to escape tutorial hell is to stop passively watching and start actively doing. I want you to open up your code editor right now, grab an element, change its text, spawn a new element, give it some cool style. Every single interactive web page on the internet is just a combination of these basic moves. So what corner of the web are you going to build today? Go make it happen.